everyone! Thank you for watching this watercolor painting time lapse. My name is Valerie and I go by the artistic pen name of Boom Cookie. Welcome to my channel. I hope you will enjoy this video and like it and subscribe. So here, I'm getting back into watercoloring here for a pet caricature portrait for my good friend who has a dog named Buster. Buster is my god dog, more or less. Sweet boy, and belongs to my good friend. So I wanted to create this for them for their wedding and anniversary. So far in this painting, I'm using two techniques so far. I started with the sky, where you wet the page first, and here in the landscape backgrounds, which are actually the Beverly Hills in the background there that I'm currently painting, I'm going in on dry paper, and it's just a matter of how I want the pigments to spread on the page. When you add pigments to water, wet page, they spread. And if you are doing it like here, where I'm adding the paints to dry page, they, as you can see, they stay right where you put it. It's very stationary, so there's no bleeding, there's less texture. This is more of a flat color with a lot less texture. However, here I am going in with some slightly different hues to create, again, more of a flat texture, but a variety of colors. Little trees in the background are too far away to see them individually, but they are definitely happy little trees. As you can see, I am here starting to block in our main subject. Very lightly working out the shapes of this character of Buster, and starting out with some warm tones. I usually work light to dark, warm to cold. Starting to put in some variety in the hues of his fur, because he's a brown dog with lots of different various types of browns. Now here, you just saw me lift that up and fill it back in. That was in fact a mistake I was fixing. So watercolors can be somewhat forgiving. You can add water to it and lift it, and then go back over it. Now once the pigment soaks into the paper, it's going to be there. It's going to be slightly pigmented, but you can more or less fix mistakes if something happens like that. So in that ear, the background bled into the ear a little bit because it wasn't dry enough before I painted it. That's probably the most common mistake with watercolors. You have to go around the painting and keep mixing colors and paint different parts of the painting while certain parts of it dry. And it can be very difficult to be patient enough to let it dry and go around the painting and do all that kind of variety of work while you're trying to get it done. use a favorite technique of watercolor painters where you lay in your base color and then you drop in another pigment and they mix while on the page. It's such a beautiful and magical effect, and there's nothing quite like it. Watercolor, I believe watercolor might be the only medium where you can do that type of technique on the page. And here I'm just going in and starting to create the texture of his fur. He's such a shaggy dog, such a shaggy good boy. And I'm trying to get the look of that shaggy fur in there while also creating this variety of tones in the browns of his fur. To get into all the details of his face here, and it still looks relatively flat because I'm primarily focused on getting the correct hues and colors in, but in terms of shades and how dark, I go in later with more layers to darken the correct areas, and eventually it ends up popping. But in the beginning stages like this, it can look fairly flat, fairly washed out, fairly boring. You know, you just got to have that patience and keep layering until there's this magical last step where it just pops and it looks amazing. Using a technique for the shadows where the base colors are in there, and then I put water on top and drop the shadow color in on top, which means that there's a texture underneath whatever I already put on the page, and then the shadow has its own texture that's a little bit different than the texture underneath it, and it just creates this beautiful volume in your painting. I highly recommend. It's just a great technique. And here he's got his eyes. I'm trying to get the colors in there. He's got these beautiful brown, golden brown eyes. And his toys here, you know, have some very fine details. And, you know, I really like this because while the overall painting is like lots of large areas with lots of washes, you know, very clearly his fur is this large space within the painting that's got a lot of washes on it. Here in these toys, I'm really having to go in with some fine detail and be really careful from the very start how I put those colors in there, because if they layer on top of each other incorrectly, now that's an area where I don't want it to bleed at all. It won't be charming because we'll lose the details, and so gotta be a lot more careful there from the start. So now we're getting into some more of the details, and I'm really starting to try to delineate the shapes and create more of a three-dimensional form using darker shades. Oh, this bed is great. I really, really loved how this bed came out because it's a texture that I always really enjoy. Whereas Buster's fur is so difficult because it's brown, and he's the main subject, so I want him to look a certain way. This bed, I got to be a little bit more loose with it, and it's this beautiful muted color that I got to use, and then the paper towel lifting technique to create texture on it, and it's just so subtle. It was this really nice subtle piece of furniture, his doggy furniture, to put right behind him to offset the complicated layering of his fur, and then those little pops of green right behind it, really making the layers in front, the bed and then the dog, pop out in front. It just creates so much dimension. And again, I really love watercolors because you can just create these textures, and the water basically just does it all on its own. You know, you just barely have to do anything, and it's magic. So we're putting in our little button eyes, as they say, on our ducky, who is, I believe, I was told that was Buster's favorite toy, his ducky. Could be wrong about that. These are all his toys, though. I want it to be authentic. Just add a little bit of shadow in there, really pop out the form. Crazy thing about this ball is that I was eyeballing the ball. I was eyeballing it because I needed that pressure of eyeballing it to kind of get it right. I don't recommend that most of the time, and I definitely generally try to avoid doing that type of thing. But there are some things where I just know, for me and how I work, I put a little bit of pressure onto myself to get that right, and also rely on my instincts as an artist, so that even if it's not technically perfect, like if you drew out the geology of that ball, or the geography of that ball, a nice little ombre effect here, and then I do a lift. You can see the pattern on the paper towel, which was kind of fun. But yeah, if you did the actual geography of that ball, I don't know if it would be mathematically perfect. But in terms of making it look right, making it look good for this painting, I knew perfectly well how to do that. And here we go, getting those darks in there, getting those details, and now his face is starting to pop, and we're really starting to see him smiling at us. Buster the Labradoodle. So cute. Painting and putting in shadows, putting in the details to help make it pop. Again, I was looking at reference when I did this. Again, it might not be technically correct, but when you look at it on the page, it looks like it works, it feels right, and that's what matters. when it comes to art. Don't get too hung up on anything. If it's something you can't do perfectly this time, do your best. Think about it, figure it out better. The only way to learn is to do it. Get the experience, figure it out, and the next time you can do it better. Maybe, hopefully. Another paper towel lift here. And boom, you see the little pattern on there that I just painted, and I lifted it up so that it's much more subtle on the page. I like how it's very subtle on the page. Because here we're coming in and we're increasing the contrast. I'm upping the contrast a little bit in a painting way. I wanted it to look like the sun was shining, but I didn't want a golden glow to this painting, but I did want it to look very bright, and I wanted it to look like Buster was out in the light. And so I'm putting in lots of little highlights and clarifying any of the white forms and any of the negative space. And I'm actually going in now on top with a little bit of gouache. It didn't quite work the way I was hoping. I was thinking since gouache is thicker, it would lay on top more, but surprisingly, it still got absorbed into the paper quite a bit because it's still water-based paint. So I kind of had to experiment a little bit more with the thickness of the gouache here than I was hoping, but eventually I kind of figured it out, and as you can see, he's really starting to pop now. Kind of bling bling, little bling blings, bling bling bling. That's what I do when I put the highlights in. I go bling bling, putting in the bling bling. Now, unfortunately, I did not get the part of the video where I was laying in the metal colors here, but as you can see, I feel like it was very successful. It looks very much like a metal nameplate. That's what I was going for. And just putting in the final details for that here and for Buster. And that's that. And then I trimmed the page and dropped it on off to my friend. And sincerely hope she enjoys. I hope they enjoy, she and her husband.